right. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on which coast you're on, everybody. Thank you for joining us for today's CPT Monthly, What Now? Putting the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund to Work. Today we have a special guest, Aimee Witteman from Rewiring America. She's going to walk us through how they plan to use the award that they got from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. We have kind of a tight 30 minutes today, so I'm going to introduce Aimee. She's going to share some slides, and then we're going to have some prepared questions presented by my colleague, Jacqueline Lee. And I guess I'm jumping ahead of myself. Hi, everyone. I'm Annabelle Rosser. I'm a policy analyst with Atlas Public Policy. And then at the very end, we'll have about 5 or so minutes for audience questions. So throughout the slides and the prepared questions, go ahead and drop your questions in the chat. It's always really helpful to let us know who you are and what organization you're working with your question, if you feel like it, and then we'll have a little bit of time to answer your questions at the end. So again, welcome Aimee Witteman. She is Rewiring America's head of investments, where she works on scaling strategies to help families and communities electrify, a very important part of our fighting climate change. In April, the Power Forward Communities Coalition, which is formed by Rewiring America, as well as other organizations like Habitat for Humanity, Enterprise Community Partners, Local Initiative Support Corporation, and United Way, were selected to receive one of 3 Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, GGRF, of the National Clean Investment Fund grants. So via this grant, they are going to receive $2 billion to build a national financing program, providing customized and affordable solutions for single-family, multifamily housing owners and developers. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Aimee, and she's going to walk you through some of her slides.
Great. Thank you.
Everyone, bear with her as she figures out how to do that.
Jacqueline and Annabelle, you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, I gotcha. Hold on 1 minute. Hi, everyone. Okay, you can see my slides?
Yes.
Okay, great. I can't see you, so you have to tell me. Okay, hi, everyone. As Jacqueline and Annabelle said, I'm Aimee Witteman. I'm the Vice President of Investment and Policy at Rewiring America. And it is great, as people are joining, it was great to see some friends and former colleagues on this call. Thank you to Atlas Public Policy for inviting me to participate in the monthly call. I'm excited to share a little bit more about this Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund award, as Annabelle said, and how we're putting it to work, or we will put it to work. There's like a major caveat at the front of my prepared remarks, which is just that we are in active negotiations, as are the other awardees, with the Environmental Protection Agency. So this is necessarily a work in progress, and I just want to make sure I'm underscoring that. The award was announced, but awards won't be made until later this summer, and we're in those conversations with EPA. So very briefly, before I talk about the GGRF award, for those of you that are not familiar with Rewiring America, I just want to give a little background on our work. We are a young organization. We just started in the summer of 2020 with the goal of electrifying the US economy. No big deal. We played a large role in getting billions of dollars for electrification incentives into the IRA, and then working with a number of you and lots of other people to get that historic law passed. And now we're laser focused on ensuring the promise of the IRA is fulfilled through implementation on the ground in communities. And we'll talk about what that is looking like and how the GGRF is going to supercharge those efforts. Our analysis as an organization is that we have to electrify 129 million households. This is to be on pace for our climate goals. And this is an analysis that's rooted in a study of the US energy system that our founder, Saul Griffith, did in 2018. And Annabelle, if you want to share in the link, or in the chat, the link to the Sankey diagram for energy nerds on the call. This was a study that Saul did through a DOE ARPA-E grant in 2018. But the upshot is that his study concluded there's a huge role for demand side changes to our energy system, and that we need to electrify everything for everyone. and that there's a necessary relationship between the planetary need to increase our collective ambition on climate and articulating a path forward that's practical, understandable, and personal. So that conclusion brought us to this, which is that 42% of energy-related emissions come from 5 decisions that we make around our kitchen table. The machines that heat the air and water in our homes, cook our food, dry our clothes, and how we get around. Those 5 things are tied again to 42% of our energy-related emissions in the US. And while changing out the machines for electric ones is critically important for climate, we also recognize that it affects how much money is left over at the end of every month, and the health and comfort of our homes, and the safety of our kids, and the jobs and vitality of our communities. So our North Star goal is that we make electric machines the most affordable and accessible for everyone. This for everyone part is what led us to reach out a year ago to enterprise community partners and to form a coalition, as Annabelle said, called Power Forward Communities. So we pulled together a coalition with enterprise community partners, LISC, United Way, and Habitat for Humanity, really bringing together, Rewiring America, this upstart, aggressive, climate-centered organization, with our premier affordable housing providers and legacy organizations like United Way that have on the ground community strength. So we formed Power Forward Communities and then applied for a GGRF grant, and it was announced that we would be awarded. We're one of the 3 awardees of the NCIF grant, which I'll talk a little bit more about. And this is a picture of the CEOs of those organizations in Charlotte at the GGRF announcement in April. And so we were awarded $2 billion. Here's some just like nuts and bolts key facts about our application. The award for Power Forward Communities is going to provide below market rate financing for single and multi-family home decarbonization. So we are a housing focused applicant for both multi-family and single family. And this is really leveraging LISC and Enterprise's expertise on multifamily, and then Rewiring and Habitat's focus on single family, and United Way leveraging their long-standing efforts and deep roots in communities around community engagement. More than 75% of the financial assistance, that we are going to be providing will be for low income and disadvantaged communities, which is nearly 2 times what EPA mandated in their application. What I'm going to talk about in a minute is that we're bringing low interest financing, but we're also seeking to catalyze market transformation. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like. So GGRF is this extremely important lever and tailwind, but we need to be doing a bunch of other things to actually ensure this 129 million households are electrified. And these dots all over the map are letters of support that we received from communities and CBOs across the country for our application, and are representative of the folks that we'll be working with on the ground to make this happen. So just a little bit more about this market transformation piece and what Rewiring America is doing on this dimension. Our journey building tools for consumers started with the calculator that we released shortly after the Inflation Reduction Act passed. And hopefully this is recognizable to many of you. We, right out of the gates, I think it was the day the president signed the bill into law, released this calculator, which really seeks to explain to the layperson what this policy means to them in terms of the benefits that they can receive. And since it's been released, over 800,000 people have calculated their savings, but perhaps more importantly, over 300 organizations, electrification startups, heat pump manufacturers, electric co-ops, nonprofits, local HVAC companies have gotten access to our API and have embedded the calculator on their sites. And you can get access to all of our tools are open source with BPI and RMI and others. Earlier this year, we formed something called the Node Collective, which is ensuring that we're making access to the incentives something that's a shared product across the ecosystem. And so excited to partner with all of you on that. So we kept iterating on this tool, and this is what is leading us now towards sort of the products and tools that we're offering moving forward. So folks asked us why we didn't include their state and local incentives in the calculator. So now we have those for 8 states, and we have more than 20 planned for later this year. People also asked us how to do these projects, like where do I start? How do I install a heat pump? How much does it cost? How much money might I save on my bills? And so we created something and released earlier this year called the Personal Electrification Planner, or the PEP. And Annabelle, if you want to drop the link to that in the chat, people can check it out. So this allows you to like go in and for your home, sort of create a plan for yourself around how to electrify your house. It pulls in the incentives from the Inflation Reduction Act, as well as any state or utility incentives, and gives you a plan for how to proceed. And then people have started asking us who've already electrified how they can help others. So we started a coaches program, and we've already graduated 500 coaches from all over the country. So if you're on this call right now and you are a heat pump nerd, I encourage you to take this course. This is the last link I'll have you drop in the chat, Annabelle, which is a link to our coaches program. And again, we're graduating people, and these folks are going to be part of the work we're doing in communities with the GGRF funding, which I'll talk about more in just a minute. So we've done the calculator, the personal electrification planner, the coaches program, and now we're getting questions for contractors and financing. And this is now what's going to be making up our overall package that we are offering to communities and households around the country. So the package that Rewiring America is offering households, again, that includes but isn't limited to the financing from GGRF, really builds off all of this work I just very quickly went over today. It includes the low interest financing as part of a financial product, but it also includes digital tools and program services, which are designed to fix the biggest problems we see in today's market. In some places, all of these offerings might be needed and relevant, but in most places, this slide will represent a menu of options that we're bringing to communities. And then we'll be working with community leaders, like many of you on this call, to identify which interventions are most impactful in that place. So the platform will be national in scope, but very local in the application. To illustrate what the local application of this will look like, the next few slides show something we call the cost waterfall of a heat pump installation, and what we're going to be doing to make the installation affordable for both moderate income and low income households. But again, I just want to like pause here and say, sort of this is our offering, and financial products and GGRF financing are a dimension, but we're also seeking to transform the market, really address the friction that is across the entire system right now for anyone seeking to electrify their home through digital tools, through community services like contractor networks, and utilizing our electric coaches as community navigators. So financing is a big part of the challenge that we're solving for with GGRF, but it's not the only thing. So let's look at this in practice. So this, looking at a heat pump installation for a home that is heated with fuel oil and would be a good candidate for a cold climate mini split heat pump. Our advanced modeling system that we have at Rewiring America, called the Cube, projects that the heat pump would save $50 a month for folks' bills in this situation. But even with the incentive stacking and the GGRF financing, there's still an upfront cost gap for a moderate income household to get to a monthly payment that's less than the monthly savings. So again, we've got the equipment and labor, and then we're braiding and stacking. This is like the popular phrase du jour right now. We're braiding and stacking the rebates and tax credits from the federal government. We've got a rebate from the state in many places, and those are rolling out as we speak in most states, as well as local and utility incentives. But there's still this gap, even with the financing and all of this. So how do we address that for a middle income family? And this is where our market development offerings come in. Since we're going to be electrifying thousands of households with similar equipment needs, we are negotiating volume pricing with manufacturers to significantly reduce the equipment costs. And since we're aggregating demand and scheduling bundled installations, we'll also be able to reduce contractor soft costs. So together, these interventions that are represented in market development and this red box will fill the cost gap and achieve a monthly payment that's at least 20% less than the projected monthly savings. So that buffer is a commitment that we're making to communities and consumers that bills are not going to go up on our watch. And then for low-income households, again, and this is you know, a big focus for us and through our Power Forward Communities Coalition, we know that even with the subsidized financing from the GGRF, that might not make sense for low-income households, especially those with existing debt. So that's why we're aiming to fully subsidize the project costs for low-income households. And a key part of how we'll do that, especially for low-income households using propane or fuel oil, is with something we're calling the Conductor Fund, which is a new carbon reduction mechanism that will allow corporations to invest in community electrification. And I can talk a little bit more about that if there's interest during the Q&A. But with this additional funding in hand, our goal is to remove the need for financing altogether in the places where it makes sense and allow low-income households to keep all of their savings. So what is next? And then I'll pull down these slides. So we are going to be launching this program. Rewiring America will be launching this program. And again, in partnership with our Power Forward Communities partners in 3 communities in October, and then scaling it in many, many more communities in 2025 and beyond. Again, it's a flexible menu that's going to be applied in a way that makes sense on the ground in places, and it's a modular platform, sort of another way of saying that. And let's see, what else do I want to say on this before I pull this down? We like to make this happen, and we can get more into this in the conversation. Like, this is reliant on partnership with people that are in the communities where we'll be launching. And I will say that the 3 places that we are looking to launch this fall, likely to launch in this fall, are Atlanta, Denver, and Rhode Island, with, again, more coming. But we are already in conversation with existing community-based organizations and donors and SEO staff in those places about launching this. And as we're learning what works, we will be applying that to the next tranche of communities that we'll be working in. Okay, I'm going to pull down those slides, and we can take questions and discussion. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Aimee. I think that was really helpful and definitely gave a lot more information about what you all are doing. So yeah, a reminder for our audience, if you have any questions throughout this portion or about the presentation, feel free to share them in the chat. But with that, I will jump right into some questions I have for you. So first, we know that GGRF is being distributed through a variety of channels, and each of those channels are going to work differently, providing different needs. Your funding, as you mentioned, is coming through the National Clean Investment Fund. So can you tell us a bit more about how that $2 billion from the fund will support projects? And like, how does that funding work? Do you re-grant to smaller institutions or provide financing directly to individuals? Are you offering loans or grants? Just kind of walk us how through all that works.
Sure. Okay. So the NCIF is a $14 billion fund out of that $27 billion of the larger pot of the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, and it's dedicated to direct financial assistance to help consumers access clean technologies. So the other parts of the GGRF, as many folks on this call know, focus on supporting community lenders and increasing access to rooftop and community solar. Unlike other NCIF awardees, Power Forward Communities, the coalition Rewiring, pulled together solely focused on the building sector, both single family and multifamily. And so that means, again, that our target audience is homeowners and housing providers. So our strategy, maybe just to like kind of restate this in a slightly different way than I did in the presentation, is really focused on 4 primary pillars. The first is to reduce friction. So right now, and for anyone on the phone who's like tried to do this, I'm doing this right now, electrifying my house, it's like extremely complex, and you have to navigate this web of regulations and incentives and the tax credits and all the systems. And so our goal as a coalition is to simplify that process and experience of household decarbonization for homeowners and multifamily housing providers and building owners. So that's reducing friction. The second piece is this aggregating consumer demand. So working with communities and local governments, we're bundling opportunities to create that market leverage to reduce the project prices by as much as 50% and create sustainable conditions for this market transformation. Like the goal at the end of this is that the market is transformed. And so that's why that additional work that we're doing on top of the financing is so crucial. So the third piece, getting to your question, is to create affordable financing solutions. So Power Forward is establishing transparent, fair, and affordable financing solutions to enable the adoption of decarbonization-focused lending products. And the fourth is to create a more equitable future. So the coalition is investing in workforce development to increase access to local jobs, leveraging our experience working with private investors and philanthropies to attract additional resources in to decarbonize more homes over the long term. So I mentioned that we're still in negotiations with the EPA about exactly what each of these 4 pillars will look like in practice. And we'll know more by the end of the summer, middle of the summer. But per EPA, 80% of the award will go toward direct financial assistance, with the rest for that market development, market building work. So Enterprise and LISC and Habitat all operate CDFIs, so they'll be able to lend directly to property owners and developers. Rewiring America is not a lender, and we don't intend to become one. And so we're going to be partnering with mission-aligned capital providers to lend to consumers. And then we are doing more, with those tools and services, that market shaping work is more what's in our wheelhouse. So the NCIF is designed to be loans, not grants, to catalyze the maximum additional private capital and to recycle funds over the long term. So we know that loans are not always viable for low-income households. And in those cases, we remain committed to leveraging other financing mechanisms. And so that's why I mentioned the conductor fund during the presentation is one way that we are looking to experiment to make this available to everyone, even those that already have debt and can't take out a loan.
Awesome. That's really helpful. So I think you mentioned like bundling opportunities earlier. This was also mentioned in the press release announcing the award, where it said that this award will bundle opportunities to create market leverage that benefits consumers, reducing remaining costs by as much as 50%. Can you explain more about what that means?
Yeah, so this is this piece where we are really seeking to make the math work best for households. So I've been talking about this fragmented, super friction-full housing electrification market that prevents economies of scale right now. So this in turn drives up project costs. So our solutions, again, aim to aggregate demand and unlock efficiencies so that the market is incentivized and prices go down. So for example, we're planning to select a few manufacturers who will materially lower their equipment costs in exchange for long-term access to customers. And given the sensitivities around those negotiations, I can say more later this summer, but that is like a big chunk of what we are doing. We are also attempting to aggregate single-family qualified projects and to bundle the delivery of projects during shoulder seasons. So this is when installers typically see lower demand, and this in turn will increase by us aggregating this, working with them to do these installs during the shoulder seasons, will increase the predictability, reduce acquisition costs, reduce drive times, and lower costs for customers. And we are already working with a network of contractors and formalizing that network so that that's another way to transform the market and bring down costs. And that part about reducing costs is really important. The price of a heat pump installation is often 3 times the price of a heat pump itself. And that's in part because it's so expensive for contractors to acquire and manage customers. So we are planning to shoulder a lot of that burden, which will free up contractors to lower their prices and get through more jobs. Yeah, I think so. I want to make sure we leave time for more questions, but I can say that for now.
Yeah, I see a lot of great questions come through the chat, so I'm just gonna probably skip a few here. But I want to talk about so Power4 communities committed to directing at least 75% of investments in low income and disadvantaged communities, which, as you mentioned, is like twice as much as EPA's mandate. What are the biggest barriers to meeting that goal, and how is the coalition planning to address them?
Yeah, so I see three big barriers to this. I've already mentioned two, the fragmented market and the lack of consumer demand, and what we at Rewiring America and through the Power4 communities are seeking to do about them. And I think, there's at least one more, which is that in our experience through demonstration projects we've been doing over the last year, led by our senior advisor, Stacey Abrams, and just for those of us who have done community-based work for most of our careers know that communities, and maybe especially low-income and disadvantaged communities, need trusted outreach. The communities that have the greatest opportunity to benefit and the most to lose have a history of disinvestment and predatory practices that have led to enduring levels of mistrust for, honestly, projects like this. So locally grounded and culturally responsive partnerships are going to be really critical to making sure the incentives are accessible to low income and disadvantaged communities, and also just something that they want to participate in, that they feel comfortable with. So we are reserving a significant amount of funding in our award, and then we are raising money from philanthropy for significant outreach and community engagement, both in terms of educating communities about the program, and helping specific households navigate home upgrades and financing packages. So again, this is something that Rewiring America has been doing in 6 communities over the last year that we want to now expand, but it's a really partnership-driven model. So working with the community-based organizations in these places that already have the relationships, have the trust, have capacity that we can add to that capacity and work through them to be doing this work in place.
Great, thank you so much. So I'm going to turn over to Annabelle, who's been moderating our Q&A. So let's get started with some questions for that.
Thanks, Jacqueline. We'll do some rapid fire. So we had a question from Mel Haske that was asking how they can indicate becoming a community partner or a partner community for future scaling.
Oh, that's great. Let me put my contact information. If you folks should reach out. And I
think Noah already dropped your email in the chat, so he read your mind.
Oh my God, Noah's like, oh my God, my fave. Okay, thank you, Noah. Unverified Noah. Yes, please reach out to myself or Noah at rewiringamerica.org, and we will. We'd love to reach out to you. We have a community implementation team internally that's working with folks on the ground, and we would very much look forward to be in touch with you.
Great. We have a question from Seth Green from Craft 3 at CDFI in Oregon, who was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on if the plan is to focus on low-income households within disadvantaged communities, or low-income households within low-income communities. And then to talk a little bit about the way that heat pump costs can vary depending on where you are regionally. You mentioned that in Washington, they're higher.
Yeah, totally. So, and Noah, feel free to come off mute if you want to elaborate on this since you're on. We are seeking to work target low-income communities in low-income and disadvantaged communities. So low-income within LIDAC. I will pause if there's anything Noah wants to add to that. I know we're running short on time. Okay. And then, yes, so I will put a couple of things on this. The cost of electricity is very different in different markets. So you may have noticed that I have said we are really prioritizing, at least to begin, fuel oil, delivered fuel, and propane markets, because that's where we know there can be a savings. There's also likely a savings in for households using electric resistance. We know there's like wildly different costs of natural gas. So I will just put in a plug, since we have so many policy organizations on this call, as well as that our amazing policy team led by Kristen Eberhard and Zach Pierce are working on policy, upstream policy conditions, so that we are working on rate reform and PUCs and working to balance the system cost so that electrification is more affordable in more places. But we are very clearly targeting places where we know that consumers will save money on their monthly bills. And we know that is not going to be the case in all places right away because of the cost of natural gas in different geographies around the country.
Okay, and I think this is going to be our last question. I'm going to bucket a couple together. We had a couple questions about partnership and who the financing setup will be available to. So once the financing process, I guess, is set up, is that something that's going to be available everywhere or just via your partnerships? How do we ensure local financial institutions are in the loop to accessing this financing for homeowners?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't have, I would say that this dimension of the project is still under major negotiation within the partners and with the EPA. And I would say, like, with the other GGRF partners as well. I mean, I think that, so I think it's like to be continued, this part of it, but we are very committed. I met with community foundations yesterday and community CDFIs to be working with. In each of these places, it's going to look really different. Like in the same way that the partners we're working with to do outreach will look different depending on the place. So is there state green bank that we're partnering with? Are there, local CDFIs and financial institutions we're working with? But we know, so it's going to be very localized depending on the community that we're in, but there's a commitment to that from Rewiring America and Power Forward. And people should reach out. I know we didn't have a chance to go through everyone's questions, so I'm happy to just be put y'all in touch or get answers to questions that you have that we weren't able to get to on the call today.
That sounds great. We'll go ahead and follow up. A recording of this will be available. So if folks want to go back and reference anything or look at the presentation or share this with somebody who wasn't able to make it live, please do so. And then we'll make sure to share this link